What if your life was an invitation and everything wasn't just happening to you, but through you? When you start to believe in the magic of you, you become it. This is your invitation to heal and rise above into the fullest expression of you. This is the Liz Svatek Show, and your transformation starts now. Let's begin.
All right, welcome back everyone to the Liz Svatek Show. Today we are exploring a conversation that I believe every woman in midlife needs to hear. There comes a moment in so many women's lives when something begins to stir beneath that surface. Life may look fine from the outside. The boxes may be checked. The responsibilities may be handled. The goals accomplished. And yet, there is a quiet sadness that can happen, a longing, a restlessness, a sense that something has ended, even if we can't quite name what it is. So perhaps we're grieving the woman we thought we'd become, or the dreams that never came to pass, the relationships that didn't unfold the way we hoped. Or perhaps we're grieving an old identity that no longer fits. What if grief isn't a problem to solve? What if it's an invitation into a deeper truth, a deeper self, a deeper life? So joining me today is Dr. Marcy Cole, a holistic psychotherapist, speaker, author, and guide who spent decades helping people navigate life's transitions, awakenings, and transformations. Together, we're going to explore what grief is really trying to teach us in midlife. So, Dr. Marcy, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you, Liz. I'm privileged to be here. I love that introduction and how you just set the whole conversation up because it's so rich, it's so layered, it's so important for sure.
Absolutely. And you and I had such a great talk about this offline, so I knew this was going to be a great conversation. So I'm so excited that you're here. The first thing that's sort of coming to me is I wonder if what many women are calling dissatisfaction or restlessness or even depression is actually grief. What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. I think that we don't usually say as women we're grieving unless perhaps it's a death that we're, dealing with or we're walking through. Because oftentimes that's what we're thinking about grief. We think it's about who died. But there's so many changes and losses we experience in our life cycle that bring these feelings up. And instead, sometimes we're like, we're feeling distracted, or why am I feeling not myself, or why am I feeling irritable? All of these kinds of things. Maybe it's hormonal, but oftentimes we are grieving something that was, or something that we're afraid will never be again. And we haven't, up until now, called it that. And so I think this is why it's such an important discussion, and that we're paying attention to it the way we are, and that we will continue to do in this conversation and beyond, hopefully.
What do you think we're really grieving in midlife? I know for me, I was grieving. I mean, I thought I was going to be kind of sad when my son went to college. He's going to college an hour away. I went into a deep grief over that. It was so strange. It was like even his graduation, I was grieving. It's these kind of big transitions that in some ways we're like, well, I need to be happy. Like he's got into a college. He's graduating. Like, but it just felt like this big ending, right? I was really relieved, honestly, that I have a career, that I have a job I love, that I'm in my legacy work. But so many
Yes.
women are not. What do you think we're really grieving in midlife? Is it the past? Is it our attachment of how we thought life was supposed to unfold? Like, what do you think it actually is in midlife that we're grieving? I mean, it's so many things, but what do you think it is?
Well, let's just start with that example because I think a lot of women can relate to that example, particularly who are mothers. I mean, oh my gosh, you conceive, you you are carrying this other being in your belly or taking them into your arms if it's not within your own body. But then raising this child and pouring so much in for so many years, we're talking 18 plus years. And then all of a sudden, which is the job of parenting, is to create an independent, well-adjusted human that can go and fly. All of a sudden, you don't have to think about who to make dinner for or who to pick up, and not to mention the affection and everything that goes into the beautiful relationship, hopefully, between parent and child, even though there are other things along the way, right? That can cause some distress and discomfort that you got to work out. But the deep love, the deep unconditional love and bond, and then all of a sudden they're gone. They're not gone, but they are not in the house. It's never going to be the same. So the loss of that identity as that parent, that a daily attention to this every single day, will never be again in that way.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised, Liz. I think that it doesn't even matter how well adjusted you are or how full your
Yeah.
life is, when that role we've played is changing, we feel it deeply. And I've talked to so many friends, and I do not have my kids of my own, but I have walked the path with my friends and clients so often where they've experienced that. I think it's odd if you didn't, if you just went bye,
Right. Good luck.
and no, right? It's not that every woman is going to feel it they're all going to have their own unique experience, but I think it's just part of the grief that we feel is the loss of identity. Well, if I'm not that every day, then what am I? Or just the loss, or just the missing of the experience. I had a friend say, raising my children and doing that, I loved it so much every day for so many years. And all of a sudden, so the closeness remains, it evolves, but we can't go back to what it was. And that's what grief is about. That's the portal. That's the tunnel we walk through. It's not going to be the same anymore.
Yeah. And then I want to also talk about, because there's so many different things that come very unique to midlife, right? Maybe we've been married a really long time and now we're like, oh, or like the kids go or they don't. Like we just get to a stage in our marriage where we're like, oh my God, like I've kind of not addressed how the gap in this relationship and kind of what's not there anymore. Or we've divorced, or we're in a new relationship, right? Like there's a lot of kind of endings and transitions in midlife, really unique to that time period. Like even if you don't have kids, right? People go through those career transitions. Like, God, I started a business. I don't even like it anymore. Right? Like, so what about those
Oh,
transitions?
okay. Well, you just said a lot because they all, there's the, well, look, when I think about grief, I think about sort of the loss of what was, the letting go of what was, is what we just addressed as one example. The loss of what may have been, right? And what might never be. And what is changing. And you're talking about the changes in our biology, the changes in our relationships, the change of our professional, if we had a professional life before, what are we doing now? Is retirement approaching? What does that mean? Changes in the nature of our relationships, changes from our adult kids who are now ready to launch, changes in our familial situations, sibling relationships, aging parents. If we have a primary partner, what's the nature of that partnership? How are we doing together? Do we need an upgrade? Do we need to actually separate? Which is a lot of times that's what people decide. I have a client whose child is not quite launched, but decided to separate, wanted to get her to a point where she was, on her feet and doing well. And so people are thinking about assessing, how are we doing? And sometimes people decide separation and divorce, and then that's a whole adjustment. There's so much there for us at this stage of life. There's also the grief of time. I don't know if you remember, Liz, like I remember being a younger person and going, "Oh my gosh, well, if I've lived 25 years, I've got another lifetime or two if I live that
Yeah.
long." And it felt
I
it
got
felt
all the
so
time in the world. Yeah.
all the time in the world. It felt spacious, it felt exciting, it felt empowering, it felt full of possibilities. And then all of a sudden, our mortality becomes something that we really start paying attention to. And then the finite nature of time right? Instead of the infinite nature of time, become very palpable. And that's bizarre. That can be very destabilizing and scary and shocking to the system. However, there is a way to move through all this, which I'm sure we'll talk about in this discussion. So we just said a lot. Your soundbite, my soundbite, there's a lot of things that we are letting go of by choice or circumstance in
Yeah,
midlife.
100%. And you mentioned something really interesting to me because, you mentioned to me, I don't have children, right? But that you had felt a grief coming back about that. Can you kind of talk about that? Because that was something I never even considered. But then I thought, my gosh, I do. I have a bunch of clients who never ended up having kids for whatever reason, whether it was by
Yes.
choice or they couldn't make it happen somehow, or they didn't have a partner, or they didn't want to do it alone, or whatever it was. But
Yes.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. That has come up for me personally in the last year and a half, which has been a surprise. Just to give you some background and context, some people have consciously chose not to have children. More people than any other generation, actually, because of the freedoms that we have. I actually wanted to have kids. That was a vision I had for my life. Anyway, based on my age, I was 41. I was in a second marriage, entering a second marriage, and everything looked good, but it didn't happen. Went through fertility, didn't happen. Went through, I would say, a brief grieving process. By brief, I mean definitely curled up in the fetal position at times, going, "Oh my God, I am not going to be a mother in this lifetime." What? We call it in psychology sublimation. You know, I don't like to be there very long in that uncomfortable space. Maybe some can relate to that. So
Of course.
I wanted to make something of it, right? So what
Yeah.
do? I say, well, gosh, there's so many other people, friends, clients. I know there's other women that are sort of suffering in silence with this, grieving in silence. I want to make this a conversation. At the same time, I was researching this idea that there was at the time like 153 million orphans in the world who were looking for love. And so, anyway, launched a nonprofit that called See Mama at the time that supported the connection between people without kids by choice or circumstance and kids in need. And then all of a sudden it made sense. Oh, that's my why. That's why I
Yeah.
didn't have kids. I was meant to do this. And that
And which
one
is
of I mean,
incredible legacy work, by the way, and turning your pain into purpose, turning that
yes,
pain into triumph. Like, I love that. But this is why this is so interesting to me in your story, because you did, like, if I was going to coach you, Dr. Marcy, if I was going to coach
yes,
you, that is exactly where I would take you. Once we kind of
right.
fell through the grief, I'd be like, okay, where do you want to take this? Because how can you use that? Right. So,
Yes,
what a
yes,
brilliant thing you did.
yes. And it was a beautiful thing. And it did that, what they say, turn the pain into purpose. And it did give me, I've always had my private practice. That's been consistent, but this was something else I was doing. And I was running this organization for 6 years until a larger organization adopted it. And we had some amazing experiences. And it was beautiful. But there was a time where I did not want to be an executive director of a nonprofit. So it was time to again let go of that baby that it felt like I birthed a baby in that form. So then years go by, right? Years go by. I'm doing a bunch of stuff. I'm producing life enrichment events. I have so much love in my life. My life is super rich. I leave Los Angeles in the summer of 2022 after 18 years. I moved to a city with my partner for a while. We knew it was going to be more short term, we thought. But anyway, I I was able to have the blessing of one of my dearest friends' daughters had just graduated college and came to stay with us for a few months. And I kind of got to be like partnering with my friend of delighting in this young woman, but also still kind of guiding her as she's walking through this period. Anyway, long story, but when she left, when it was time for her to move on to where she was going, I had, and she had a relationship with a guy at the time, and he was so lovely too, about 25. And I was just looking at them across my table. This is at the same time that my friends' children are in their 20s and sometimes
Yeah.
early 30s. And now their children, full circle, are becoming, it's this beautiful relationship. There's this beautiful caretake. They're both caretaking each other. They're laughing. They're having shared experiences. The parent isn't carrying all of the responsibility anymore. They were just sharing life with their kid, and they're adoring their time with them. So when all of this is happening, all of a sudden, years and years later, the grief of not having a child or more came up for me. And I thought, gosh, my life is so full, but I would have loved to have had that experience, right?
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
going back into grief and what do we do with it?
Yeah.
First of all, when it's there and it's present for us, it not only finds us, but it has to be expressed. All of a sudden, I was super tearful a lot. Like we'd be having dinner and we'd be doing a toast, and all of a sudden I'd feel all verklempt and it was coming up. And then all of a sudden, I'd be at having out to dinner with my guy, and we were talking, and it just a floodgate of this never happened. And now at this stage of life, here's the thing about for people who haven't had kids, one of the things that I think comes up in the grief experience is the lack of witness. It's not just the depth of a relationship, but it's a lack of witness. When my parents in their later years, we were kissing their toes. We were so devoted. Like going back and forth to Florida, taking care and sort of that, it's that kind of void.
Yes.
So that is what I will say about that. And I imagine that there might be many women listening that might relate. There might be many who are listening that haven't really might relate, but they haven't allowed themselves to acknowledge it or address it yet. And some people are cool. They're not, that's not their experience, but that has been mine.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about grief, and I coach women through this. You obviously are doing your therapy through this. Is that I feel like people heard about those stages of grief and they think literally it's like a Monopoly game. And like, okay, first I'm gonna go
Yeah.
on Park Place and I'm gonna
Yeah.
feel angry. And
Mm.
then I'm not knowing that grief is a little more complicated than that. Like you said, it could look like I'm irritable. It could look like I'm numbing out. It could look like many things. But letting yourself feel it, like I have to tell you, women apologizing for their tears. I'm so sorry I'm crying. I'm like, oh my God. You're like, we have to stop
Right.
apologizing for tears. And the
Right.
tears stuck in your throat, like that term,
Mhm.
all that unexpressed grief. How do
Yes.
we encourage ourselves? Because it's scary, Dr. Marcy.
Yeah.
Like when we're feeling those
Yes.
feelings, the feeling is
Yeah.
it's never going to stop. If I
Right.
open this door,
Mhm.
if I really let myself feel this, Dr.
Right.
Marcy, I
Yes.
don't know where is this going, right? So what would you say to somebody that says, because a lot of women tell me that, what would you say?
Well, we've heard many, many times, right? What we resist persists. And so the truth of it, as we know, is that, boy, if you cry a river, will the river ever,
Yeah.
will it ever stop? But the truth is, yes, it will. Yes, it will. The gush, right? The intense, acute experience of it, of acknowledging, of like, oh my gosh, this is real for me. It comes up, it's really intense. But it's just like a good cry. When you have a really good cry and you come down from that and it feels so good. It's like you feel light. It's almost transcendent, actually, the way you feel right after a good cry. So I would say, yes, that intensity does subside. It's just like if someone loses someone they love, that acute period is a stage. Nobody is in that state forever. However, it doesn't mean it goes away completely. Means Meaning we're going to address it from time to time. Sometime you're going to miss your kid. You're going to be like, "Oh, I wish they were here." That doesn't mean you're going to have the same experience of when they first left, right, for college or wherever. Um
Absolutely.
it's the person who has passed, it's not the guttural, experience in the beginning, but boy, there might be waves. It's about waves, riding the waves of it. And so, yeah, I think that when we hold it in, it just lingers and then we're alone with it. But if we can be with it, um, it's such an act of self-love to stop, put your hand on your heart, and just like you would anyone you love, just totally embrace them and be like, "Come here, I'm here for you." Be able to hear ourselves and feel ourselves that way. And sometimes in our grief, when we're dealing with whatever we're dealing or feeling, we have these big feelings. Sometimes we want to talk about it, whether it's a dear friend or sister or therapist or coach, whatever, or God. Hello. Like
Yeah.
that connection to the divine.
Yes.
When we're brought to our knees, usually we feel closer to that invisible presence that is always available to us for support and guidance. And that sense of it's gonna be okay, you're okay, this is the journey.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. But you holding space for whoever you're working with, that's such a gift. And, if someone is just there to say, "It's all right, and I got you, and you got you, and we're gonna just hold space for this as it moves through you."
100%, 100%. It is a gift, and I have to say, I never wanna rush anyone through the process, and I will say too, I love, the way you're kind of framing this, that it's transcendent, because it is. To me, it's like clearing the channel. You let
Yes.
that emotion out, and suddenly you
Yes,
feel lighter in your body, lighter in your mind. You do,
for sure.
right? And just
Yes.
thinking of it as more of a connection with spirit, God, universe, spirit, whatever Gus, whatever you wanna call it, right? Like, really thinking of it as like, "Oh, that's how I'm gonna literally, connect with the highest version of me to source and everything," right? Because that is such a human thing. To release that feeling, right, is to literally reach a hand up, right, and take a hand and get some help, right? That's what we're doing, and I think that's kind of the reframe, and I love the way you're kind of reframing that for us, and I love that. And I also really wanna acknowledge you, like, this is a really big deal. I have a lot of women who will say to me, "Why is this coming up again?" It's like there's so much shame around, like, "Oh, I already grieved this." Oh my God, is that right? It's like, no, to me, what's so interesting about this and the way I teach this, but I would like to know how you teach this. When people tell me, oh, it's coming up again, and they have all this shame around it, I say, no, because you're not in the same place, right? Healing is like a spiral. You're spiraling up. And yes, you hit that wound again, but you're hitting it from another place. You're not where you were before. It's not the same
No,
exact experience. Right? But that
no.
doesn't mean that it's not gonna come back to visit for more healing or more wisdom or more releasing, right? How would you say that if a woman is over here shaming the fact, right, that this grief, like in your case, right? Here you come, and let's say you're not Dr. Marcy Cole, you're just a woman who's over here shaming herself because she's sitting across from this beautiful 25-year-old cute cutie and her boyfriend, and all of a sudden you're just mad at yourself because you have tears coming up. What would you say to that?
Oh boy. Oh, gosh. Again, okay, so this goes back to understanding the life cycle as we zoom out. It's a journey that we're all on, and there is no blueprint. and there it's fluid. So I love that you brought in that you were not who you were before, for sure. I didn't feel shame myself. I felt surprised for sure. And I was like, "Oh, wow, this acknowledgement is back." So then you approach it with acknowledgement, awareness, and curiosity. Like, okay, wow, why now? What's it feel like? What am I thinking about this? How am I feeling? You approach it with grace of just saying, wow, okay, then here we are. Here we are, you know. And by the way, it's not meant to be gulped down in entirety and to consume us. Grief, whatever we're dealing with, we spend time with it. We have ritual around it. We might need a cry. We might need a talk. We might want to journal. We might want to pray. We might need to meditate. And then we get on with our day. We get on with our life. and then we address it again. So it's just allowing ourselves, it's not a diagnosis. It's not a condition to be fixed or cured. It's a state of being that is part of the human experience. And I don't know anyone that hasn't had grief in their life or won't, whether they are consciously aware that that's what it's been or what it is or what it will be or not. So yeah, just almost anticipating it as a part of the experience of life.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Liz, I always um, wish for people when there's a change or transition, a bittersweet experience. You know,
Tell me
that
more. What does that mean? Oh my
it
gosh, I want to know.
it means that wow, you're feeling sad that you're leaving college or that you know, you're sentimental that oh it means that the past experience was sweet enough for
Mm,
you to have a wave of sort of sentimental melancholy of like, wow, this will never be again. Almost anticipatory, like I get it. This is a moment that will
yeah.
not be repeated in my life again. And that might feel bitter, but it's not. It's just that it's sweet enough to feel that wave. Um, and also the sweetness of moving forward and knowing that now there's going to be space and discovery of new pathways and new relationships and new things that you've not, in new parts of yourself, new versions of yourself that are yet to be discovered and birthed and expressed in the world. So that's sweet too. So bittersweet transitions. Yeah.
I love this because to me, what you're saying, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is that grief is not evidence that something went wrong. It's really evidence that you love deeply, you hope deeply, you've
Oh,
lived fully. So when you're saying, I wish
yes.
you a bittersweet experience, it's because there's evidence that it, like, in other words, if, I have a client that just recently lost her father, and it really actually chokes me up to think about it because
Yeah.
she loved this man so
Yes.
dearly and he was taken just out of nowhere, right?
Yes.
But she wouldn't feel that level of grief if she didn't have that beautiful relationship with him, that if she didn't
Yes.
adore him and love him, right? So it's the bittersweet of life that we actually want to have, right? So, and grief
Yes.
is part of that. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And when you talk about your client and her father, I think a lot of people can relate to this when they've been blessed to love that much and to love that deeply. Um, I will tell you, here's another piece of the grief discussion, which
Yes.
is something that I experienced myself as well. I was pretty like, together, meaning that I was doing my thing in my adult life and taking care of myself and viewed as all that, but there was one thing that felt debilitating that I was very aware of. It was anticipatory grief of losing my parents. And I was
Mm,
a very independent. I mean, it's not like I went to them for advice or I wasn't financially dependent on them, but my connection with my folks was so deep and so beautiful, both of them, that I remember in my 20s going, "Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen when you're not here and I can't share this joy with you?" Like, I could not imagine. My friends of 30, 40 years remember me. I couldn't even talk about it without getting choked up.
wow.
Fast forward, but here's my own journey with this. Every time I left them in Florida, they lived till their mid-90s.
Oh, amazing.
Every time I left, not every time, but there were tears. It was like, "Is this the last time? Is this the last time? Is this the last time?"
Yeah, yeah.
I lived across the coast. But, one of the things, back to your question of how can we deal with it versus avoid it, and how can we work with it gently and compassionately and patiently and lovingly with ourselves. I was just aware of it, so I was working it for a long time. So I combined the fact that I did sort of face it and feel it and express it for a very long time before they both passed. There was nothing left unsaid. I say to people, boy, if you're dealing with a friend who's got a diagnosis of something or a family member, because death is inevitable, it's going to happen to all of us. What hasn't there been said that you want to say? And what do you want to clear? You know, how can you wish them well, no matter, even if it's a strained relationship? How can you wish them well? And I say, talk to their spirit, even. But anyway, so there was nothing left unsaid. And I would add, and of course, the gratitude that I've loved that much. They've lived that long. They've had such an unbelievable life, right? Like, hello, we don't live forever in this body. But the other piece, Liz, and everyone listening, is that I believe in the unseen. That's my own personal thing. So believing the unseen and that love doesn't die. Personalities, the body dies, but love does not. I don't believe love dies. So fast forward, they both passed within 11 weeks of each other after 74 years of marriage a few
Wow.
years ago. And do you know that, sure, I had some soulful cries in the beginning. I did their celebration of life thing. I've kind of been breezing through it because of all those things. Because I let myself feel for a long time, because I appreciated that relationship. I had gratitude for it. And because I happen to believe, I do think when we have a connection to something beyond all of this, it
Yes.
certainly helps us cope, and it helps us believe that there's something, again, back to the transcendence, or something transcendent happening that it might not be revealed through our five senses. But do we want to be open to it and believe it or not? That helps a lot.
I absolutely agree. I think when people pass, the veil is thinner. You have a bigger connection to them on the other side. I teach that. I believe in that too. And
Yes.
I will say, it's so interesting you're bringing this up, because my mother just recently turned, well, not recently, she's turning 80. She would probably kill me if I said that's how old she is, but she is
Yeah.
turning 80.
Yes.
Probably kill me. But
80 years young. Go ahead.
80 years young, exactly.
Yes.
And you know what? And to that point, I have a lot of 75 and 80-year-old clients. These women are still in the work. They are still vibrant. They are in legacy work. I love this. I love this age,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So my mom was coming to me for Mother's Day, and then she was gonna go back home to Connecticut. And
Yes.
and I hadn't given her, her Mother's Day card. I forgot because we were so busy celebrating Mother's Day, I forgot to give her a card. And a girlfriend of mine, or I'm sorry, my husband said something to me that I nearly killed him for, because my mother was feeling sick, and she was in a little mini health spiral. And my husband said, "God, I hope she makes it out of this." And I was like, "Listen, Donnie Doomer, like, what are you doing right now? Like, why are you saying that?" Like, he had but he was really expressing, like, a real fear. Like, he really loves my mother, and he was a
Mm.
little worried about where she was.
Yes.
That I was so mad at him when he did that. But then I realized that was a gift, because here I have this Mother's Day card, and she's about to come by my house to say goodbye to me on the way to the airport. So I take an hour and I write in that card. I had tears flowing down my face, Dr. Marcy. I wrote every possible
Aw.
thing I was grateful for,
Aw.
anything I could think of. I relieved
Mm.
her from any guilt she may feel for
Mm.
anything at
Mhm.
all. I wrote
Yes.
that letter like it was the last letter that was ever gonna be read. I said, "Please read this on the plane." She read
Mhm.
it on the plane. She said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so emotional. Thank you for this letter. Oh my goodness."
Aw.
But I
Yes.
realized, like, I needed to start feeling a little bit of that anticipatory grief. Like, I needed to know, like, yes, your mother is 80. There is
Yes.
no guarantee. My mom's actually in good health right now, praise the Lord. But, really, there is no guarantee. People who are perfectly well can die out of nowhere.
That's right. And you know what? I don't know if it's just I don't know if you've noticed this, but it just feels like there's been a lot of passing of younger people. With the world situation, by the way, I'm going to come full circle back to this, but the other piece of grief is that if you're a sensitive being who loves and cares for humanity, and perhaps professionally as an inspirational speaker or coach or therapist or whoever, there's another part of the collective grief that's happening right now on the planet. It's very, very real. It's palpable. A lot of people walking around feeling distracted, overwhelmed, worried, sad, exhausted. from all of this. We're living through a whatever era we're in, but it's something new, right?
Yes.
I
No,
think
it's
we
a very
all
unique
feel
time.
it. And so, what you did with your mom and being very intentional about, I don't know what this lifespan will be for her, but just the reminder that we can't take it for granted, that it is impermanent,
Yes.
dropped you into your heart, and you had this beautiful something that you will be feel good to you and her forever. And what I will tell you is, because of the collective um, strain and suffering in the world that's happening in our country and beyond, when I'm with people, okay, two things. One is, especially people that are personally close to me, I'm I'm actually practicing that with a peer, a friend, and saying, it's not about morbid doom gloom, like you said, it's more about like, this person is so dear. I just want to be so present with her. And what if I ever saw her again? Okay, cancel. But how can I live this experience in such a present way that I'm fully here and honor her and might say things, and that we don't have to wait. We really never have to wait. Between these personal experiences and then the state of the world, it's made me more sensitive to kind of look at people in the eye, strangers, people you love, take a moment, get off our devices, and be present and be there. And that's what helps move through, I think, transitions for sure. Was there anything left unsaid? No. This relationship was pure and right. Um, as opposed to, I wish I had, I wish I had, I wish I had. But let me just say about that. If we ever have I wish I had grief,
Yes.
which
A
that's
lot
a
of
whole
people
bucket,
have. A lot of people have that.
that's a whole bucket. What I say to people is, if they have some grief around what they did or didn't say to someone in their life, I go full gestalt, spiritual. I say, talk to them, talk to their spirit. They hear you. Understand that that's like what you were saying about time. That's where you were then. You weren't ready. It didn't come to you then. But know that love is love and presence is presence. And you can say whatever you want to say at whatever time in your life, whether someone is embodied or not.
Absolutely. I agree with you, and I love that because that makes it feel like, oh, because a lot of people would say, "Oh, I don't have the closure." It's like, well, no, because the closure is gonna come from your side, right? There are
Yes.
people that die and they're estranged from their parents. I have a client that we worked really, really hard on kind of healing from her side, because her mother was passing and there was some estrangement there, and she was able to really lovingly help her mother pass, and it was a beautiful thing because we did not do 1 ounce of work on this mother. This mother was who she was. We did the work from our side, right? So there's always work we can do from our side, whether the person is embodied or not, that helps us to get to that point, right? So that we can kind of heal through that, and I love that. I love that because it's not like, "Oh my gosh, the person's gone. I have no chance, like, I have nothing," right? So I love that reframe. So it seems like what we're saying is that grief is really a teacher, which is, of course, what I believe. That grief is teaching us about presence, right? And how to be grateful, not from a shame perspective, like, you should be grateful, but, like, from a real perspective of, like, "My gosh, I love this person. I love to be with this person," right? But I also heard you say before, and I wanna come back to it, was that it kind of creates this space,
Yes.
right? That for new
Yes.
things to emerge. So can you talk a little bit about that so that when we have this grief, right? And
Yes.
sometimes when we
Yes.
let ourselves feel it,
Yes.
right? We let ourselves express it and we don't shame it. We don't try to push it down. We just let ourselves feel it. It creates a new space. Can you speak to that?
Yes. I mean, look, I think in all life transitions, we are letting go of the old version of who we were, what we did, how we identified in the world. And as we move through that, it's uncomfortable, right? As a newborn baby's coming out of the birth canal, I'm sure it's not a joyride. It's probably it might be, but it's probably a little uncomfortable. Like, this is so comfy. Where am I going? So we go through the portal of this transitional. It might feel disorienting. We might be riddled with grief. We might be uncomfortable. We might be afraid of the uncertainty of what's next. But as we go through that portal and we allow ourselves to, no emotion is ever final. No moment lasts forever. There are going to be other moments. And as we come out of it and we have that exhale, okay, that allowing and that acceptance, then all of a sudden, while it still might be a little uncomfortable, all of a sudden we're not as uncomfortable as we were. And then we start looking around and we start hearing things and we start dreaming and we start wondering. I just launched a Substack called Wondering into Wisdom.
Ooh, I'm
Because
going to follow you on Substack. I love Substack.
yes, because it's about wondering, oh, okay, so who am I today? Who will I be tomorrow? What will I discover? Who is a new human, beautiful being in the world that I will meet for the first time, like you, for me, Liz, today? Thank you. In these transitions, we let go of the old version of ourselves, and it creates space for the new version that is asking to be birthed. And if we look back, if everybody looks back on their stages, they can do this themselves. They can look back. Who are
Yeah.
you then? And then what happened? And then what happened? Most of us did not actually, our physical body did not die. We moved on and we had more experiences and hopefully richer, more expansive experiences as
Yeah.
our life unfolds. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Marcy, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation and helping us really see grief through a more compassionate and conscious lens. So thank you so much.
Can I end with one thing?
Sure, of course.
I'm going to leave you with two things.
Okay, great.
One is an interview that I saw with the late, great, beautiful kirtan musician, singer-songwriter, writer David Newman, who passed unexpectedly quickly at the age of 61 a couple of years ago. And I love what he said. He said, we think that letting go is hard, but holding on is harder.
Mm.
So this idea of can we move into that understanding and that deeper wisdom that I'm holding on, but it's time to let go. And there's a freedom in that. The other thing I'll share with you is my favorite mantra that came within me, I don't know from where, but I am practicing this very, very regularly, daily, and sharing it with others. And it's simply this. It's simply, with a breath, there's 3 words, 2-letter words. It's let on the inhale, go on the exhale. The second word is be on the inhale, hear on the exhale. And the third word is just on the inhale, trust on the exhale. And so if you think about it, letting go of the past, it's not here anymore. Being here right now, staying as present as we can with our lives, all of it. The stuff that makes sense, the stuff we're still wondering about, the stuff that's joyful, the stuff that's hard, all of it. Be here, be present, and then just trusting. I wear a trust necklace every day, just trusting what the future holds for us. And that's what I wish for myself and you and all of us on this human path that we're on together. And thank you so much for inviting me into this discussion. We could have an entire retreat about it, right?
Oh,
It
absolutely.
is so rich. There's so much more that we didn't even talk about that's just layered and layered. And so for anyone who's listening, I hope that they will tune into themselves. What's gnawing at me to acknowledge?
Yeah.
And what am I wanting to let go of in order to be more present for my life today?
Absolutely. What grief am I avoiding? And where could I feel it and open up to a new possibility, which is really
That,
what we're talking about today. So
that's
I
right.
love that. Thank you so, so much, Dr. Marcy. And to
Thank you,
everyone
love.
listening, if today's conversation touched something in you, please don't rush to fix it. Stay curious. There's so much wisdom waiting beneath what you've been calling grief or disappointment or sadness. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Share it with a woman who may be standing at the edge of her next becoming, because sometimes what feels like an ending is actually a doorway. It's a portal, like Dr. Marcy said. to the life your soul has been trying to lead you towards all along. So until next time, keep choosing yourself, keep growing, and keep living your legacy now. Bye, everyone.